we're back with another episode of the Pop Culture Cosmos. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and the Lakers Fast Break. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our great shows. And if you can, please give us that 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Plus, if you could like, share, subscribe today to get the latest notifications on when we go live on the air with the latest pop culture cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, Lakers Fast Break, all the great things that Melinda does with the vampires and Vitae, but also do not forget the great things that you can get this holiday season by going ahead and going on over to happyhoardercollectibles.com. Check out the latest great pop culture gifts for someone in your life today at the Happy Hoarder. But it wouldn't be a pop culture cosmos without my good friend. He is a spooky rendition of Josh the Great. It is a good friend indeed. You got to go ahead and check out his awesome and amazing pop culture experience known as the Happy Hoarder and happyhoardercollectibles.com. It is Josh Peterson. And Josh, I know since next week, I'm going to go ahead and give you the week off because we're doing a state of pro wrestling. I figured we bump up our talk of horror talk this week. Looking forward to some chills, spills, thrills, and scares this holiday season.
Yes, yes, indeed. I always love talking about horror movies. I don't really know many people who enjoy watching them, so it's always a pleasure to talk about, especially since, I don't really get to watch them as much as I once did. So this is exciting to me. I've been looking forward to this chat.
There you go, my friend. That'll be coming up here in a bit. Plus, also, as well, we will be talking about some changes at Marvel because of what's gone on with the SAG after strike and also some restructuring by Kevin Feige himself when it comes to the television and movie games. So I want to hear Josh's straight up thoughts on that as well. But first, my friend, it is the box office, and Melinda and I were talking about the irony and all the interviews that have been going around in regards to the one of the greatest directors of all time in Martin Scorsese. He's back with a new film, Killers of the Flower Moon. He's talking about this and that and how the industry should be and what type of movies should be presented to an audience. And wouldn't you know, Taylor Swift, as we had talked about and predicted on the Friday show, in all irony of ironies, beats out Killers of the Flower Moon, 31 million to 23 million here domestically. And with the Marvels, ironically, on the horizon, that will make it much more interesting. I think that it will have long legs, Killers of the Flower Moon, especially because the fact it's going to be an awards season favorite for many awards upcoming. But it's kind of funny, though, again, seeing the first results to see that Killers of the Flower Moon didn't quite have the takeoff that I think that a lot of people were hoping for. You're on mute. Oh, I got you. Okay, go ahead. Now you got it.
It makes you wonder, is it a matter of Martin Scorsese not being able to keep up with with what, or is it a matter of him being jealous of what's going on with like the superhero films, or is it a matter of like his movies just don't hit modern audiences?
Well, I know the 3.5 hour runtime might scare away some people. Didn't for Oppenheimer, the 3 hour runtime, because Oppenheimer is already closed in. Probably is going to fall just short of $1 billion, but it's been a mega hit worldwide. And again, the fact that it was 3 hours didn't seem to intimidate a whole bunch of people, but 3.5 hours. Do you think that might lay into a little bit reason why that it just has not seen the success, or maybe the time of year just before Halloween to bring out a movie such as this? Kind of seems like there were so many things working against it, including the SAG after strike. Obviously, you're not going to get any of the interviews that you need from the PR tour that you could possibly have had there been no strike involved.
It's weird because I think some of it is he's built up some like bad will because of the comments that he's been making about movies. And that's not to say I don't agree with some of the things that he's saying, but I think it might have rubbed some people the wrong way. And also, you look at it, like a lot of movies are going for that long form film. Maybe not like 3.5 hours, but still pretty close, right? Like look at
Yeah.
most of the new superhero movies. I guess that's a bad example, but just any movie in general. And I'm sure like when
That's not
Napoleon,
the example he
Oppenheimer.
would wanna give. Let's just put it that way.
Right, right. But like, look at Oppenheimer, Napoleon's coming out. I'm sure that's going to have almost a 3 hour runtime. Like, it is anything that branches out and tries to tell like a decent story is these days goes beyond that 2 hour mark. And I think with a Scorsese film, like I loved The Departed. Like Departed was one of my all-time favorite films, but
Mhm.
he takes a really long time to tell his stories and often they don't pay off in the end. And even looking at it, I was actually reading there's a lot of people are not happy with some of the themes that he chose to go along with in his film. So I
Mhm.
don't know. Maybe there's a lot of factors playing against him. Maybe people just aren't. It's just not something that people are willing to go to the movies for. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I have not heard a lot about it. So the marketing might have been off. I didn't know that it even came out this weekend.
Yeah, it's something where, again, where a lot of people were kind of, you know, freaked out by the fact that this is a Oscar contender. It's not coming out in late November or December near Christmas. Usually that's when the big guns for the Oscars comes out, and this will probably be one of those most likely to succeed scenarios for the Oscars as far as Robert De Niro, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Lily Gladstone. Those three are being prominently mentioned as well as Martin Scorsese. So I have a feeling that yes, it will be fondly remembered by the Academy come that time. Whether or not it has long enough legs and continues to go ahead and earn consistent money up until then before it hit Apple TV Plus because it is a cooperational effort and a lot of the money was pitched in by Apple TV Plus to get this made for this $200 million plus movie. So I don't think it'll make its money back in the box office, but it has to go ahead and really charge up Apple TV Plus in order for it to really substantiate itself as a winning product overall.
Yeah, but and then at the end of the day, though, that's a lot of people are waiting till it hits streaming. Not that movie in particular, but a lot of the other films that are coming out, people are just waiting till they come out on streaming services to watch them. It
Yeah.
has to be some kind of big event film to get people out of their off the couches, out of their house, and into the theater. And I think that's where the streaming community, not streaming community, but like streaming service are going to end up eating themselves because it's not yeah. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that the film industry is gonna end up eating itself because of these streaming services.
And that's true. But again, when it comes to these, Apple TV Plus, they've talked about trying to up their game and up the ante. They've talked about getting themselves into live sports with either some more soccer slash football, wherever you're listening to this, or talking about more Formula One, things of that nature. Just trying different things, and Apple TV, Plus when it comes to Apple, they've got just a cavalcade of money that they could throw at projects like this. So it's not going to hurt them too much. It's just that when it comes to what all these are tours talking about as far as their product being meant for the cinemas, yet
Yeah.
at the same time, gladly taking money from these streamers in order to go ahead and get these movies made. It just seems ironic that, for instance, like his last film, The Irishman. The Irishman only appeared in theaters for a very short time. It was basically meant for Netflix. And it just seems like when he says one thing, I don't want to say he's being hypocritical, but it certainly leans in that direction when he talks about the money he gets from Apple TV Plus and Netflix for these films, yet he wants to make sure that you first and foremost try to go see it at the cinema.
Yeah, and sure, maybe a lot of movies are, movies made by Scorsese, Chris Nolan, people like that, like, maybe they're meant to be seen in the theater. But yeah, I mean, when you're getting ready to throw some streaming money at something, or when you're getting ready to accept some streaming money, it's a whole different story. Money changes tunes. Money changes tunes, but not personal opinion. So you're going to if you're getting paid a lot for something, then you're just gonna let it happen. Money makes the world go round, so they say.
That's true indeed. But before we go ahead and head to the break, I wanted to ask you this. Taylor Swift's movie obviously is still generating money, even though it was down almost 70% from the original weekend. Will still continue to make money. But when it comes to a movie such as this, it is something that's going to be at the forefront of talk for the Oscars. But there are several other movies as well, including Oppenheimer. Barbie will probably get a lot of mention as well, and some others. I wonder how well it sits with Martin Scorsese, would to see that there's a good possibility that Barbie and some other movies that he may not normally be approving of, in his mind, get the same kind of public attention. And in this case, with Barbie and Oppenheimer, I think he'll probably be okay with because obviously it's Jonathan Nolan, someone who sees everything the same way that he does. But when it comes to a movie like Barbie, he said good thing about the Barbenheimer experience as a whole, but when Barbie might get recognized a lot more or a lot at Oscar time, I wonder how he will perceive that, especially the fact that it's going to earn so much more money than his movie that's being released this weekend.
Yeah, Scorsese's part of a dying generation, not physically dying, hopefully, but the type of film that they make is dying. Those types of stories, the type of filmmaking that they do is slowly disappearing. And I think he's having a hard time, much like me, not wanting to go silently into an all digital future. I think
That's for sure.
Scorsese is fighting this the rise of the franchise film. I think he's fighting that because there is not really, and it's sad, but there's not really a place for filmmakers like him in the modern cinema landscape. And I think he's struggling with that. He's struggling to adapt. Like Chris Nolan is someone who adapts pretty well. He can create something that does flow well with a modern audience. I think Scorsese is part of an old school generation of filmmakers that is struggling with what is happening right now.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, it is going to be interesting to see what kind of lifespan at the theaters Killers of the Flower Moon has. It'd be interesting to see. Again, it'll probably get a short burst once the Oscar nominations are announced, or if it does win Oscars, it'll probably get a short burst there. But overall, the lifespan, what do I think it will, or actually, it will be very curious to see what the lifespan of this movie is as far as at the box office, and also when does it hit Apple TV Plus? Because once it hit Apple TV Plus, could it be an issue of timing where people predominantly want to see it on Apple TV Plus and not go back to the theaters for it or go see it at all? It's going to be very interesting to see that, knowing that Apple is fronting a lot of this, expecting a big return when it comes to subscriptions and people gaining interest in its Apple TV Plus service. So yeah, be very interesting to see. But what are your thoughts out there on Killers of the Flower Moon and how it performed this weekend? Are you going to go ahead and check it out at the theaters before the end of its theatrical run? Or are you interested in just checking it out at Apple TV Plus? Please let us know your thoughts. Popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. My friend, there's more to talk about on today's program. Marvel's been making some changes behind the scenes. I know you've been privy to that, my friend. I know we've discussed it a little bit, but I wanted to go more into detail, especially upon hearing the news last week that Deadpool 3 has been pushed back due to production issues related to the SAG after strike. Remember, that was a movie that was going to be released later in 2024. It got moved up to the big first week of May 2024 deal. Now that's being pushed back. Captain America, which was in that slot, then got pushed off that slot, is now being put back in the May 2024 slot. That's the latest Captain America, and that's coming out. That's coming out in the first week of May. So, That's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. But your thoughts, my friend? It just tells me that Captain America, the latest movie, it's not no longer New World Order. It's the new Captain America movie. I'll get you the new name here in a second. But that movie is now being pushed back into the spotlight in May 2024. Your thoughts on Deadpool being pushed back again, and actually Captain America moving up again back to May of next year?
It says a couple things. One, sorry, they're not really getting anywhere with the SAG-AFTRA strike, right?
Yeah.
There was some news where they had, I think they met for a little bit, and then nothing
Yes.
ever came of
And
that.
Then George Clooney, he and some other stars put in kind of like a thing contingency plan that they thought, might be acceptable to both sides. Going to be worth what, about $150 million or something like that. Something, as far as that would be, that Healy thought would be beneficial for both sides, but both parties, I guess, refused it. So it looks like that they're going back to the table sometime this week. But yeah, the sides seem farther apart than ever at this point in time.
It's crazy, absolutely crazy, because we're gonna hit this point where there's no movies coming out at all. Like, everything that's been cooking is going to
Yeah,
be done, and everything that was, like, halfway through being done is not going to be done, so it's gonna be, like, a year of, like, no movies coming out. It's crazy. Um, with Deadpool and Captain America, I don't know. It maybe they're looking to make Captain America like a flagship franchise again, or not franchise, but a flagship film again, because maybe it's moving towards something big and they want him at the center of it.
mhm,
Or maybe it's just a matter of Deadpool is, if you read about it, Deadpool is getting bigger, and this film is getting bigger and bigger. There's more cameos than ever before. So maybe because of the strike, it's losing, not losing momentum, but it's slowing down because they're trying to get all these people in, and they're not going to have time to film all these scenes
yeah.
based on people's schedules. I don't know. It's hard to say. Captain America, though, I got to be honest, man. Like, I like the show. I
It's,
like
by the way, it's Captain America: Brave New World, not
Brave
New
New
World Order.
World.
I like
Okay.
New World Order better, but they
I like
thought it
New World
had
Order
some.
too.
But that, going back to especially to the '90s in wrestling, but New World Order probably would have been me for bet kept it, but I think there was some issues with that, so they made it Brave New World. But go ahead, my friend. I'm sorry.
Yeah, anyways, like, yeah, no, I agree. I I enjoyed the show well enough, but I'm having a hard time imagining a Captain America movie without Steve Rogers in some form. Like, is Anthony Mackie, is he a leading man? What do you think?
He did okay in the series. I think the fact that he has to have a lot of help from Sebastian Stan. I think as far as him, both those guys play off each other so well in that series. That's when the series was for me the best. Getting to know their stories together and getting to know and learn their relationship together. Also watching Sebastian Stan's, aka the Winter Soldier's backstory in the show was kind of a little bit interesting as well, as far as learning more about him. But just seeing their dynamic, I really think that they play off each other well, and I think that's what's going to put them in that spot. So maybe if you don't think he has the same type of charisma that maybe you say a Chris Evans does in the Captain American role, I'd still say the dynamic between those two will push it over the top for a lot of people. Plus, Anthony Mackie did a great job in Twisted Metal. Just the fact that it was on Peacock, so I don't know how many people actually got a chance to watch.
Yeah, so I've been meaning to watch Twisted Metal. I keep forgetting that it's on, and I need to turn that on. Um, so is Sebastian Stan going to be in the new
Oh
Captain
yeah,
America, or is he?
he's a big,
Okay,
and not just the Thunderbolts. He's going to be a big part of this as well. Yeah, absolutely.
okay. Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, because I think that they did work very well together. I just Anthony Mackie's character, they've always sidelined him, so he's never really gotten a chance to shine. So I think that's why I'm having a hard time, imagining him like leading an entire film. Because even in the Captain America show, like when he became Captain America, he was not like a focal point. Sebastian Stan and what was the other guy, U.S. Agent, were they
Yes.
were kind of the two focal points of the show. So this is why I'm having a hard time imagining it. So I hope that I'm pleasantly surprised. But Captain America is not like, just to be honest, it's not my favorite of the Avengers. So I'm I'm cautiously optimistic.
We'll see what happens, my friend. But I really think when it comes to Deadpool 3, I think that would have been probably obviously the more financially fiscal choice. Both, I think, can actually earn great money at the box office. I think just
Oh, for
because the
sure.
fact that that Captain America IP will probably go ahead and garner a lot of interest just because of what it is. And I think that when it comes to Deadpool, would have made even more. But again, it just the after effects of the SAG after strike, my friend. It just when it comes right down to it, it's affecting everything. And Marvel is probably one of the biggest entities that it's affecting the most. Now, the TV side, you heard the recent things that were going on in regards to Daredevil, Born Again, having to go ahead and actually retool it. Kevin Feige got a hold of the first 5 or 6 episodes that were already shot, didn't like what he saw, so he sent the writers packing that were a part of it and brought some new people in there and they're actually basically retooling it from scratch. So we'll see what's going on there. But also, he's been very unhappy and probably rightly so with the product that Marvel's been putting out there on television. So they're revamping the way that they do Marvel television. I don't think it's the number of television shows because I know you said it was hard for you to keep it up at time. I just think the quality was the issue, which could be leading into one each other when you make so much Marvel. There's a quality issue in G, but I think it's just across the board. The television and the film product need to go ahead and Kevin needs to go have he needs to oversee it a lot closer in the future going forward because the product as it is right now isn't quite what it used to be.
I think they've fallen into a formula and they're having a hard time breaking free of it. I also think that Feige is feeling I don't want to say threatened by James Gunn and what he's, about to release, but I think there's a cause for concern there that DC might surpass Marvel, not surpass Marvel, but James Gunn has worked for Marvel and now he's working for DC. So I think that there's some fear there, but also, yeah, like we want quality stories, and if they have to take longer to come out, then that's fine. But at the end of the day, we all they have to put something good out. Like the whole thing with Daredevil, from what I understand, like they were trying to turn it into something that it wasn't meant to be. So they're trying to take him and move him away from what made him so great on Netflix, and I guess that wasn't it sounds like that wasn't working out so well.
No, no, it doesn't sound like it was working out well at all, and hopefully it will get it fixed. But yeah, just some of the projects were lackluster. While I really enjoyed Hawkeye, I know it was one of the least watched of the Marvel shows. Moon Knight, I did not enjoy one bit, and that's something that again was also one of the least watched shows. And some of the other Marvel shows as well were not really viewed on. And Secret Invasion, that had a lot of hype to it and really let a lot of people down. And I think that's what the camel that broke the straw that broke the camel's back is what we saw with Secret Invasion. That really was the straw that broke the camel's back on that one.
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to watch Secret Invasion. I did enjoy my time with Moon Knight. Miss Marvel was kind of a bummer to me,
Yeah, that was
and
at best. So
yeah, yeah, and I don't know, I'm trying to think of the last one I sat through. I started watching Loki again. Loki's okay, but,
yeah, this season is not shaping up to be as great as the last season. I think that this season especially got off to a very confusing uh
mhm.
foot as far as the season's concerned. I think this latest episode, episode 3 that I got a chance to watch was a really good, really strong. The production value on it was amazing on this third one as opposed to what we saw previously. But the first two were just trying to do too much explaining too
Yeah.
much like people get turned off on Star Trek as far as you having to go ahead and explain everything to you as far as all the stuff and technical things, and that's what they did in Loki's episode 1 season 2. It's just kind of too much of that. But episode 3 was more about them going and trying to figure out everything as far as how to fix it, and in action it was more action involved, and it was more the interpersonal relationships involved and everything going on there. So it seemed more adaptable, I think, to a Marvel audience, and I think for that fact, it was probably a lot better than what they've shown anytime of the other episodes that it's shown this season. So yeah, I think through episode 3, if you get a chance to go through it for season 2, I think it's gets you back in the mood to watch Loki.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm enjoying my time with Loki, but I the shows I don't know, like, I have a hard time getting through the shows, like, I'll start them, not Loki, but, just in general, like, I started Hawkeye, wasn't able to get through it, I need to go back and finish it, but, like, Miss Marvel, like, I wasn't able to get through the entire series. Moon Knight was easier because it's so short, but I I don't know, like, it's just the quality is not the same as the
Mhm.
films, or and I struggle with that.
Well, I know that a lot of people like yourself are struggling it with it too, and it's not. I mean, it's understandable. It's understandable that you have those issues, and I could truly empathize with that. And we'll see because the Marvels is coming out here in the next couple of weeks, and it's going to be a true test. I mean, the numbers in advance are not what Captain Marvel did as far as that's concerned, what they're projecting it at, but it could still possibly do somewhere around $100 million for an opening. I think if it does $100 million or close to it for an opening, domestically, I think that's a big win for a movie in early November, especially for a genre that is kind of fading at this point in time and needs some bit of life. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to go ahead and talk about great success with it. But even then, I don't know because, like you, a lot of people were kind of down on Miss Marvel. Yeah, Captain Marvel the first time around, even though it did over $1 billion in at the box office, was that a product of the Marvel's machine at that point in time, or was that a product of people actually wanted to go ahead and enjoy it? I've grown to like Brie Larson's Captain Marvel a lot more in recent go rounds than the first time around in Captain Marvel because I thought she was a little bit wooden at that in that first movie, but she's really come to like similar like Thor. She's really gotten her personality more injected the character, and for that, I'm really starting to enjoy it, and hopefully, we'll get to see good things from it in the Marvels.
It's funny you're talking about Thor and Captain Marvel. Like I don't like the direction that Thor has gone. Like I feel like
You did
trading
like the comedy Thor.
no, well, I don't dislike the comedy, but I feel like they with Thor especially like they're trading, and Marvel's been doing this all across the board. They're trading story good storytelling for cheap gags, and that's something that I think needs to come to an end, and that's also like what I'm imagining the Marvels to be like. I'm imagining there's going to be a lot of jokes. It already judging by the trailers, already looks like Miss Marvel is the comic relief, and I just if it's not going to tell a story that I can take seriously, I'm gonna have a hard time latching onto it.
We'll see what happens, my friend, in a couple of weeks with the Marvels, and of course, we got everything going on with Loki. But where are we at in the state of Marvel right now with all the changes being made behind the scenes for all the television stuff that they're doing going forward? Plus the changes that were made with Deadpool 3, I should say, Deadpool 3 being pushed back to October and Captain America Brave New World being moved up or moved back into the May slot in 2024. Please let us know your thoughts. Popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. Well, my friend, before we head on out, it's that time of the year. We love talking Halloween stuff and horror stuff. And I know you said you don't get a chance to talk about it too much unless it's with me here once or twice every year. It seems like it's always a great conversation when we talk your favorites in horror for gaming, for TV, for movies. I will tell you this, and I will start off with this to get you in something in the mood for this Halloween that is not something you've seen before. you should go out of your way to go to Netflix, and everybody else should too. Fall of the House of Usher, based off the work by Edgar Allan Poe. I mentioned here previously, it's gotten a 10 by IGN, gotten really high reviews across the board. I got a chance to see a good portion of it already, and I'm very impressed with what I see. It does give those Halloween vibes, those haunting vibes per se, of the thought of murder and betrayal as far as this family is concerned. But I want to give you that for starting point, my friend. But let's start off with some of the horror things as far as you like, whether it's gaming, whether it's video, whether it's movies. What tickles your fancy when it comes to horror, my friend?
Okay, so I have my list here.
Okay. Yes, that's what he was checking out
Alright.
right now. He's like, I got my.
That's what yeah, sorry, I was just getting it out. Alright, so gaming is hard for me because I don't like to be scared when I'm playing games because it gives me anxiety, and when I have anxiety, like, I need to, like, turn the lights on, I need to take a break every few minutes, and I don't know, I'm k with games, I'm kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm kind of a scaredy cat
Okay.
with games because, um, well, I do Dead Space, one of my all-time favorites, right? If you haven't played the remake, definitely play. It's less scary because in high def, you can actually like see the things. What made the original Dead Space scary was the fact that the the graphics weren't that
480p,
great.
yes.
Right, right. So you couldn't see any of the things coming at you, and even when they did attack you, they look like they would often get stuck in the walls or they'd like blend in with a mop or something. So you like it had you didn't know where it was coming from. But in the Dead Space remake, you can see them. It's less scary. The last game that I played that truly like terrified me was Resident Evil Village, and that was they put you in this part where like you're in this house and there's this little like I think it's like a doll creature,
Mhm.
and you're walking around the house and you just hear its voice in the background and you can hear footsteps and you're like, oh my gosh, it had my heart pumping so hard that I thought I was gonna have a panic attack because you have to get around the house before this thing catches up to you. So that's where I'm at for games. Let me jump over to you though for games. What do you anything in that category for
I
you?
actually have something for you, my friend, to start off with. And that is you, if you haven't got it on your PC, or if anybody out there hasn't got it on their PC and they're listening to this on the week of October 22nd, 2023, jump on over to Epic Games because right now for free, two of Bethesda's horror games, The Evil Within, are absolutely
Mm,
free. The Evil Within is absolutely free right now. So you go ahead, hop on, you download it. And then on the 26th of October, The Evil Within 2 is absolutely free for those on Epic Games. So just want to give everybody a heads up on that. Those are very interesting as far as the type of horror genre there. Dead Space, you mentioned it earlier. It is one of the highest rated games of the year as far as the I don't want to say not the reboot per se, but the remake per se of this. It has been something that a lot of people have been really fascinated by. Resident Evil Village. What always gets me on that one is not the scares per se, Josh, but it's the attention to detail. This was one of the first games that I think really kicked off this next generation. If you play it out on a PS5, play it out on Xbox Series X, or you play it on a high end PC, you will see the attention to detail in the facial animations that make it so much more haunting and so much more scary. And that's to me is one of the reasons why Resident Evil Village really is probably to me one of the best of the Resident Evil games, almost dating back to the entire list. Obviously Resident Evil 4, people loved that one the most, and I get that. I liked RE5. I know there's a couple. RE7 is also very good, but Resident Evil Village is probably the one that I think is really resonating with me for quite a long time. That's because just the attention to detail in the graphics to me just mesmerizes and makes it so much more haunting of an experience.
Oh, absolutely. You know, the most terrifying thing about most of the Resident Evil games is
Mhm.
that there's always some larger than life character chasing you around some very
Mhm.
small space. in Village, it was Lady Demiscu, I think her name was.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 2, you have the big guy. Resident Evil 3, you have Nemesis following you around. I don't know. That really gets the old blood pumping when that happens.
Are you a Silent Hill guy? I've never been a Silent Hill guy, so I want to get your thoughts. Are you a Silent Hill guy?
So I played Parasite Eve, but Silent Hill was one that I never got into. I think it just went past my radar when I was younger.
Okay. The reason why I just ask, I know that's a stalwart of video game horror video games, and the thing is, they keep trying to talk about a reboot possibly for the Silent Hill series, but it never seems to come to full fruition. So I'm interested to see if that ever happens. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably where I'd lean to as well. Is BioShock to you a horror game at all?
It has horror elements to it. I th Yeah, it does have some scary parts too, but I wouldn't consider it a horror
Okay,
game. I
because
think
some people are, and I'm not sure that there is though a game that you are going to be playing in the not too distant future that does delve in the horror genre, and that's Alan Wake 2, the sequel to one of your all-time favorite games. Because since I've known you, you have raved about the original Alan Wake experience. Where's my flashlight? Where's my flashlight? But Alan Wake 2 ups the ante even more. It's coming out this later this week, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on that as far as your Alan Wake experience. I believe that you could probably classify as a horror video game.
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot about that. Yeah, Alan Wake is definitely a horror genre game because most of the game you're in the dark, you're being chased by shadows, there's monsters and not monsters, but I guess shadow monsters you can call them. But yeah, Alan Wake is definitely it's a game that hits all the elements of a good horror game perfectly. Has good storytelling. The characters are developed well. You're invested in what's going on. There's jump scares like crazy shadows with chainsaws and really great sound editing. I can't say enough good things about Alan Wake. But yeah, Alan Wake 2, I'm excited about. I forgot that it's actually coming out this week, so that was a pleasant surprise this morning when I was reading some articles about it. Can't wait
There
for
you
it. But I think what
But
made
they
Alan
moved
Wake.
it back. They moved it back because they were freaking out over what we saw last weekend with Spider-Man 2, and
Mhm.
then also as well with Super Mario Brothers Wonder. And then, they're just trying to, I don't know. I'm not sure I would have released this now, even though it is in this Halloween spirit, because there's a very real possibility Alan Wake 2, even though no matter how well it gets rated, could get trounced by so many other really good to really great games that are coming out in this same time frame.
You know what's funny is Alan Wake 1 came out around the same time some other big games were coming out too, and I think that it just had a cult following and people just picked it up over time. So maybe Alan Wake 2 will benefit from that, but
Well,
it's
okay, let me ask you this. With the kind of budgets they put into games like this, how much really do you need out of a cult following to be able to financially support it for a long time? This is
uh,
times are different, my friend.
times are different. That's a good point. I Alan Wake 2, so I am wondering if they're gonna be I hope that they will, but I wonder if they're gonna be able to recapture that magic anyways, because one of the things that made the first Alan Wake game so great was its setting. You know, you're in the woods, you're in this forest and talking to these people who are slightly unhinged. Um, are they going to be able to bring that back? And I think that if word of mouth is not great coming off this game, I think people will still play it, but I don't think they're gonna pick it up on day one.
And that's something that we're going to have to evaluate and see, because again, a lot of people are trying to deal with what games that they need to get right now, and there's so many good games right now. This is one of the best years ever for video games. No question about it, as far as highly rated video games, one after another, after another, after another. So it'd be interesting to see where Alan Wake 2, by the end of this week, when it comes out, where it will fall as far as that's concerned. And then by the time that we get to the best sellers of the year, where Alan Wake 2 falls out. So I'll be very interested to see how that game, which actually fits this genre of horror, really, where it lies in. So we'll see. But My friend, I know some horror movies that are always on your tap. So, what else do you have as far as games and movies? What else do you have for games before we head on into movies?
I don't have anything for games. That's kind of the end of my list. I got a couple TV
Okay,
shows and I got some movies here.
go for it, my friend.
All right, so TV shows, like you said, the Edgar Allan Fall of the House of Usher,
Yes.
has been pretty good so far. I really loved The Haunting of Hill House, like, that is one of my all-time favorite horror shows. Did not like
Mhm.
Haunting of Bly Manor that much, but Hill House was absolutely terrifying, and the story was really great. And who can argue against the fact that Supernatural, at least up until season 5, was an amazing show?
Absolutely. Couldn't disagree with you on that at all. So I couldn't agree with you more on that. But again, when it comes to some of the TV, if you have got to check it out, if you're really interested in some really spooky stuff, go ahead and check out Follow the House of Usher. But getting to the movies, obviously the Conjuring series has done an amazing job. The latest Exorcist movie that unfortunately is going to probably cause Universal to take a nice bath and
Mhm.
talk about some blood. There is going to be somebody's going to be bathing in some blood there, and not the kind that you really want to bathe in for that one. But tell me some of your influences as far as the horror genre when it comes to movies, my friend.
Alright, so, like, you already named The Conjuring. Sinister, I don't know if you ever saw Sinister with, Ethan
No.
Hawke, like, that was a truly terrifying movie,
Hmm.
but is also really well written. Like, that's I have a thing, right? I like my colors and I like my stories, and Sinister had a really great whoever wrote it did a really great job with it. Signs is another one that I really love. It. I don't know if you can consider it horror or sci-fi. I think it's a mixture of both, but that one was also really well done.
Well, let me ask you this: M. Night Shyamalan. Where do you classify him? I classify him in a lot of occasions as horror. I think he dips into horror quite a bit for a lot of his movies.
Yeah, I think he does. I think he dabbles in suspense, and that ends up turning into horror in a weird way. But he's also somebody that just like takes things and it's like when two kids have like an air fryer, not an air fryer, but a yeah, an air fryer, and they're like, "Oh, let's see how this tastes if we fry this," and they'll put it in there, and sometimes the things taste good, sometimes they don't. That's M. Night Shyamalan for you. Like, he'll just make whatever he wants, and sometimes it hits, and sometimes it doesn't.
Actually, there's a good deal right now. If you go to Best Buy, while they still have physical media, because they're
Yeah,
getting rid of
bums
that,
me out so bad.
that will be disappearing. There's a four-movie collection with Old, The Visit, Split, and Glass with M. Night Shyamalan. If you want, if you're interested in it, please go ahead and check that out. But uh, you know, he does delve into it quite a bit. I still tell you, my friend, after all these years, one of the best horror directors is Steven Spielberg of all time, because he was really, even in his crossover movies and his great movies of that have been known throughout the ages, he gets away with a lot of stuff that the censors allow him to get, that have scared kids and scared adults for quite some time. I'm going to tell you right now, Jaws is obviously, back then it was scaring a lot of people, and it earned a great deal at the box office. But do you remember the horrifying scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark when they opened up the Ark? I mean, a lot of kids at that time had quite a bit of nightmares, my friend.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he does a lot of things just to shock people, but I think he's also very good at using those lingering shots to create that terror.
Although
Like
now it looks pretty phony when you watch it now, like on YouTube. You just watch that scene. It's like,
yeah, yeah,
that's so
yeah,
phony.
things have changed, that's for sure,
Yes.
but, you notice how he lingers on, like, the shark when people are about to get eaten, or he'll linger
Mhm.
on the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, like, he creates horror. He uses suspense to create horror, much like M. Night Shyamalan, but he also, like I think he has a secret, like, love for horror films. I think he wants
Oh,
to
no
make
doubt.
one, but he's afraid to, uh, break into that genre because
Well, War of the Worlds had touches of it, and then obviously
yeah.
you know what he did with Poltergeist. Poltergeist is probably, that movie was, I think, still a PG-13 movie, yet crossed many lines of the horror genre.
Oh, yeah, well, it's considered a horror film.
Yeah. And I think that's something that, again, that really was able to go ahead and his clout was able to go ahead and instead of, because let's say Joe Schmo director makes it, that movie's getting slapped with an R. And that's being the case, and probably at that time that probably would have meant less people going to see it. But he was able to go ahead and get a lower rating for it, and obviously was a benefactor of it at the box office because Steven Spielberg has that kind of cloud, and more power to him. More power to him because of the greatness that he's had as far as over his career. But he's able to go ahead and sneak some things in, especially in the horror genre, which always makes me think that, man, he's just able to put things into his films that no one else can.
Yeah, yeah, he's good, and people I think the studios trust him well enough to say like, "Oh, well, Steven says it does R rating, then maybe we won't put one on there."
So let me ask you this, my friend. Where do you put in the pantheon of films some of the great horror movies that are out there? The series like Resident Evil. I don't know if it's great, but you could talk it's a series that earned over $1 billion for Sony. Obviously, the Halloween series with Michael Myers, and then obviously the Friday the 13th series. Those three series lasted years. And in fact, we've seen reboots of some of this as well already. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre as well. So when it comes to these pantheon of IPs in the horror genre, where do you rate them? Where do you feel like you consider them in the pantheon of great horror movies?
I don't know, I look at, like, Friday the 13th, I actually, enjoyed those movies, I not so much anymore, but I was always a fan of those. I don't know, there's just something like they went places, that a lot of movies didn't go at the time, and I love the setting, I love the backstory. Uh, so I would say yeah, Jason is definitely at the pinnacle of horror
Freddy
characters.
Krueger. Can't wait till they reboot that. Saw. They've just brought out a new Saw movie. So yeah, there's still so much embedded in the horror genre. And you and I always talk about how if you can make a film to start off your career, you might want to lean into the horror genre. You only need to make it for like 10, get a small budget, okay, small meaning 10, $20 million. Yet you can quickly turn around that into something much more profitable, which allows you different things. Like Justin Lin, he
Yeah,
started out in the horror
yeah.
genre as well. So yeah, definitely just something, if the horror genre needs not to be underrated at all.
Oh, yeah, well, look at was it the guy that's doing, Fall of the House of Usher, what's his name?
Let me check on that. Go ahead. But yeah, you were saying
Anyways, he's the one that made Paranormal Activity, like, that's how he got his start making
that's
Paranormal
true.
Activity, so, yeah, I mean, he's still in the horror genre, but he was able to do bigger stories with, bigger budgets, and, yeah, I mean, you're not wrong about that.
I will say this though, when it comes to the Fall of House of Usher, I think it's something you cannot afford to miss. And before we head on out, my friend, I want to hear from you your favorite horror movie of all time.
Alright, let me get my list back out here. So, my favorite horror movie of all time is one that, is a very controversial film, like, I really love the movie The Mist. So I
Yes.
hated it, directed by Frank Darabont, based on the Stephen King novel. I hated it at first, really hated it because it irritated me so much, but the way that they horrified terror not horrified, but sorry, the way that they terrified you while watching that movie, and then the way that they, psychologically terrified you in the end of the movie, it was a full, um it was a very visceral experience that used all of the senses except for smell, like, you put yourself there, and you're seeing things, and you're hearing things, and it's almost like you can feel some of these things that are happening. It's a very, psychologically intense film, and because of that, I really admire it.
I will tell you right now, though, The Fall of the House of Usher on Netflix is just truly tremendous. It is directed by Mike Flanagan and
Yep.
Michael. uh, Finn McNary. So kudos to both for creating something really, really good. And whether it's Carrie from back in the day, just some of the great movies that have come up over the years. And to me, I think the Evil Dead series is probably one of my favorite, especially with Bruce Campbell going back. Just his, he because they were able to put the comedy element into it. For me, I think that makes it to me. And plus, Sam Raimi. Guess what? Again, another director getting a start in theaters in movies based off the horror genre. So for me, I think the Evil Dead series, I think, is probably one of my favorite. Before we head on out, my friend.
Oh, Evil Dead's amazing. Yeah, no doubt about that, but that's also a movie that you wouldn't be like, I know they did a remake in the, with the mom and her kids, but it's like the original Evil Dead is not a movie you would be able to make today.
Get Out
Absolutely.
Get Out is probably my favorite movie, singular movie, horror movie in the horror genre. So I'd probably say that's probably number one. But yeah, the Evil Dead series is probably a series. It's probably pretty cool for me as well. But yeah, my friend, any last thoughts, my friend, before we head on out?
No, it'd just be interesting to see, you used to be able to go to the movie theaters and there's always a horror movie of some kind out that people would go see. So I'm just curious, like in the next 6 months to a year, like if that's going to be a thing or if we're only going to be seeing horror movies on streaming services.
Well, we'll see, my friend. I think the horror movie genre will be brisk and will be continue to be strong because of the fact you can always lean on the fact that horror movies, they cost so little compared to the other big budget movies, but usually can get a decent return. Sometimes a big return. Sometimes it evolves into The Conjuring, my friends. So you never know for sure. But we'd love to hear your thoughts on the horror genre. What are your favorite horror movies, horror TV shows and series, and horror video games? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please let us know on our social media in the description below. You can put in the comments right there or popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. Well, my friend, it's been a great episode. Next week, I'm on, of course, the State of Pro Wrestling, of course, my good friend for the PVD cast. But any last thoughts, my friend, before we head on out?
No, I mean we're getting closer to our Black Friday episode, and with physical
Mhm.
media disappearing, I'm curious what type of sales we're going to be seeing here.
Could see a lot of closeouts indeed. So please join John Orlando from the PVD cast next week for, of course, the State of Pro Wrestling. And check us out each week right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. And of course, upcoming later this week with Melinda. We've got a great show upcoming there. She's got some interviews. We got some interviews coming up here in the near future as well. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say and hope here looking forward to checking out everything that we're doing in the world of pop culture right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the Pop Culture Cosmos. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great day.